We're going to talk about royalties, how to calculate how many books an author is selling, kind of put that together to give you good expectations for your own career, and then what success even is as an indie author, and then also we'll talk about why indie authors and authors in general have a lot of side hustles. Okay, in this video, we're gonna talk about how much money do indie authors actually make. I've got a bunch of notes for you. Penny wants to be included on this video. She's feeling needy, so don't mind her. She might disappear at random. We're gonna try to be as transparent as possible in this video, and I just really wanna help you guys and set expectations. That's very distracting. Thank you. Stop though, stop. Oh my gosh, I can't even do this. This is why you're not normally in videos. In this video, I want to talk about the royalties that an indie author makes per book, which is just how much money an indie author makes per book. And I also want to show you how to calculate how many books an author is selling, like a general idea of it on Amazon. And we're going to talk about how to set expectations for how many books sold equals success for an indie author, and why most indie authors and authors in general have a side hustle. But let's start with author royalties. I think you're gonna have to go. Oh, by the way, I want to show you guys my shirt that I got on the way home from BookCon. I love it. I love this shirt. Okay, where was I? Okay, let's start with the indie author's royalties. So I'm gonna say something that's a little bit frustrating, I'm sorry, but the truth is that every single book is different. I'm still gonna try to give you some specifics, but let me explain why it's really tricky to give you an actual number. Besides the fact that the indie author business isn't like other companies where you get like a set salary. Like obviously, we all know that that isn't true, but it actually boils down to a ton of different factors. So for example, the price of the book is going to play a huge role. The number of pages actually plays a huge role as well. Ebook versus paperback versus hardcover versus audio, and even the genre is going to play a role in how much you make per book. For example, if you're an indie author, you're probably going to want to do competitive pricing. So you're going to want to match up with the genre standards. And if you've read, in different genres and bought books in different genres, then you'll know that the books aren't always priced the same. Like certain genres are allowed to price their books a little bit higher than others. And I don't totally know why this is, but I do know that if you are in, like thriller versus romance versus, YA versus like textbooks, you're gonna price your books differently. Obviously, if you price a book differently, you're going to make a different amount of money off of it. I feel like that's common sense, but if you just think it through, like a $20 book versus a $15 book versus a $10 book versus like a $1.99 ebook, those are all going to make such different royalties just because obviously the amount of money coming in is changing a lot. And then you got to factor in the number of pages. So as funny as it sounds, the printing cost actually goes up as you add pages. So a 200-page book versus 300-page book versus 400 and up page book are all going to cost very different amounts to print. And that brings me to the next thing, which is that the print-on-demand company actually takes out the printing costs before they do the royalties. Before I even talk about printing costs though, let's talk about how, first of all, every print-on-demand company is different. So I'm going to use numbers from KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, but then there's, Ingram Spark and Lulu and Barnes & Noble Nook Press, and all these other places might give completely different royalties. So yeah, it's tricky, but let's stick with KDP and just talk about their royalties, which is typically 70%, but in certain cases, they will only do 30%, and that's usually when you make your book really cheap. Like for example, if you have a $1.99 ebook or a 99-cent ebook, they will only let you do 30% royalties because I think it's like anything under $2.99, and I'm pretty sure paperback has some restrictions as well. So let's just say that you're making 70% royalties. But are you really? Let's just say for the sake of argument that you are making 70% royalties as an indie author, and let's use a really simple number to do the math here because I'm not a math person. Let's pretend we have a $10 book. So if we have a $10 book, then the royalties should be $7, right? No. wrong. That's when printing costs come into play. So unfortunately for an indie author, they take out the cost of printing before they calculate the royalties. So that means that in the case of the $10 book, it could cost, for example, $6 to actually print that book. So the page number comes into play. Maybe you have a thicker book, so it's more expensive to print. And so it's $6 taken out. So you actually only have $4 left over, and then they calculate your royalties. So if you have $4 left over and the printing on demand company is taking their cut and you get 70%, then you're going to make roughly $2.80 per book on a $10 book. You're making, you know, less than $3. That's just a general idea. Now again, it's really tricky to give you guys any specific number because obviously the printing company comes into play and their specific royalties and the number of pages in your book and the genre of your book and the price that you set for your book and the format of your book. So it's really, really tricky, but I will tell you from my personal experience that I have seen royalties generally on the low end, unless I'm running a sale and I make like almost nothing. If I'm running a sale and I just want to get the word out and I make nothing, generally the lowest that I get is like around $1. And then the highest that I've seen, you know, in my particular genre with my books and my pricing is, I think the most I've ever gotten was $4, and that was really rare. So generally, my average, if you kind of just average it out, is about, you know, $2.50 per book. That's how much I make generally in royalties. But you can play with your prices. You can make your books more expensive if you want. I think that kind of hurts you as an author. So you really have so many factors that it's really tricky to say. I know I've said that a lot, but I don't know what else to say. It's like really, really hard to give you exact numbers. All right, so that's step one in figuring out how much indie authors make, is to figure out how much do you make per book. And then step two is actually to calculate how many books indie authors actually sell. And so again, you're going to be trying to do this for yourself. So you're going to find somebody, an author who's published in a similar genre to you, at a similar following level to you, and you're going to try to figure out how many books they sell. So I'm actually going to teach you how to calculate a general idea of how many books an author is selling using Amazon and a website called KindlePreneuer. Hold on, that's not right. It's called the KINDLEPRENUER calculator, and I will link that below, but I'm also going to show you right now on my computer. We're going to go through it right now. So if you go to Google, you're going to look up the KINDLEPRENUER calculator, and this is just a super awesome website. It's pretty easy to understand and it's fairly accurate. And so you're going to scroll down and you can read through how it all works if you want to. They explain it all completely. They're going to teach you how to do it, but you're going to go to this little calculator at the top. First of all, you need to look at a specific book. So we'll start with The Stolen Kingdom, which is newer, and you're going to look up the Amazon bestsellers rank. So you can see that if you scroll down to product details, it's the biggest number in the whole store. So not the little categories, but the rank in the whole store. You're going to take that number, you're going to type it into the Kindle bestseller calculator without any commas, and it's going to tell you how many books you're selling per day. And so that looks great for The Stolen Kingdom, right? But that's because it's brand new. And also, just so you know, this is calculated by hour, so it does change. All right, let's pause the video here because I just want to chat heart to heart. Depending on where you are in your career, that could look like nothing, or that could look really good. So for me personally, about right around 2 years in, so for me personally, that is really, really good. Like, I was not doing that well when I first started out with one book, brand new, barely any following. My average, you know, after release week was a couple books a month. So just being really honest with you guys, it takes a while to get to this place typically as an author. But before you walk away thinking that's how much Bethany sells of her books every day, of all her books, let me just stop you right there with another truth bomb, so to speak, which is that newer books obviously sell better. The Amazon bestsellers rank changes hourly and it fluctuates like nobody's business. So this number is going to change often. A lot. It can change day to day, hourly. It can change weekly, monthly. When it's brand new, it's going to be a lot higher than when a book's been out a few years. So let's take a look at Evelyn's number next. And I just want to show you an example of just how different this can be. So Evelyn's number is my oldest book. And if you go to the Amazon bestsellers ranking, not the categories, but the Amazon bestsellers ranking, you will see that it is in a much different category. So let's hop on over to the Kindlepreneur calculator and type in that number. And you're gonna be seeing a very different number. Less than a book a day. This is more average for me for my older books. So it's going to really depend on how old your book is, if you're running ads for it, if you're doing consistent marketing for it even after release. Just like with royalties, there are so many factors that come into play when it comes to figuring out a true number of how many books an indie author sells per month or per week. So that's my newest book versus my oldest book. Let's take a look at how your book sells itself, which came out about 3 months ago. And after that first month of release on Amazon, the book will tend to kind of plummet. It doesn't always have to, and if you do ads, it probably will do better still. But I am not currently doing ads, so if you look at this, it says that I'm still also selling less than a book a day. Okay, so that is how you calculate how many books an author sells per day. But as you can see, it's going to vary greatly. And just the fact that I have more than one book out is also helping me sell more than one book a day. So as I put out more books and as I put more time into growing my following and just learning to do ads better, just in general, all these factors come into play that will help me sell more books. And so again, you can see how it's really tricky to give you exact numbers, but you can go and look up some authors who are in a similar following to you, who are in a similar genre to you, who do similar marketing strategies to you, and you can go ahead and look at their Amazon bestseller ranking, plug it into that Kindlepreneur calculator, and find out generally how many books that they sell per day, per month, per week. Of course, to get a really accurate picture though, you would have to probably pick multiple authors in the same genre as you and the same kind of standing as you currently, and then take a look at their bestsellers rank multiple times per day for probably at least a month to get a true accurate picture of how much they're really selling. Because like I mentioned, the Amazon bestsellers rank is calculated hourly, so it's going to change and fluctuate a lot. And if an author talks about their book, they're going to sell more books. That's what I found anyway personally, is that whenever I actually intentionally talk about my books and I say, you know, The Stolen Kingdom is amazing, it's an Aladdin retelling, you should go check it out because it's fairy tale fantasy, it's amazing. That right there is an example of something that would drive people to go look at my book when otherwise they wouldn't have. So the more marketing you put in, the more people are gonna go buy your book as well, obviously. Are you feeling overwhelmed yet? Because it's overwhelming. All right, I know that this topic is massively confusing. So in the third step, I'm gonna help you kind of put the two together and kind of try to help you set expectations and help you understand like the general numbers, okay? So again, I have to refer to what I wrote down here because it's complicated. But let's say, for example, after we put those two factors together of an average book royalty for an indie author being $250 and a very beginning indie author selling like a book a month typically, that means that a brand new indie author is going to be making about $2.50 a month. Now let's say that you sell 10 books a month, then your average, just using our example numbers, it's not accurate, but you know, just to give you an idea, you would be making about $20.50 per month. And then let's say that you're starting to grow, or maybe you're putting out multiple books, depending on, you know, what you do. You might, if you sell 100 books a month, you might make $200. And if you are one of those indie authors who's selling 100 books a month and doing fairly freaking well for yourself, because that's kind of amazing, then times that by 12 months in a year, and you are making, as an indie author, roughly $2,400 in an entire year. This is the moment where I put in some sad music and we just cry together, because this is some of your actual numbers. You asked for it, I'm here to give it to you. Don't hate messenger. And that leads to the fourth thing that I want to talk about today, which is expectations. And I just really want to talk about setting correct expectations for what equals success. Because number one is that if you are growing in how many books that you sell per month, you are successful. If you start out selling 1 book a month and you move to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you are successful. Just because you're not selling thousands of books per month does not make you unsuccessful. I really want to just pound that home, okay? Because so many people will look at an indie author, and if they look at those numbers, someone like me who's selling, you know, in theory 10 per day, although again, it fluctuates so much that it's really hard to get an exact number, especially when you calculate in other books and when they're new releases versus when they're not. But let's just be honest here. I feel very successful, and for a long time I didn't want to talk about numbers, because if I tell people selling 10 books per day, a lot of people are going to be like, that's nothing. And like, even back when I first started and I was selling, you know, 1 book per week roughly, it was probably around when I first started out, to me 10 books a day still didn't sound like enough. But now looking at it, like, I'm growing, and I think that it's really important to see that if I stick it out, that number is going to continue to grow, because the more books I put out, the more money I make naturally. And then if I learn to do ads well and I market better, the more people will see the book as well. I understand that these numbers are super annoying because, number one, nobody's the same. And so we're all going around comparing to each other, and there's always going to be somebody who's doing better than us. But I would just encourage you to look at yourself and compare it to yourself, because if you are growing, then you are successful, okay? That's number one. And then number two is unrealistic expectations, because all right, let's just be honest. We all want to be New York Times bestselling authors, and I don't know if this is a commonly known thing, but I looked into it, and the fact is that to be a New York Times bestselling author, you have to sell, I believe, 10,000 books during release week. Now, I'm not sure about that time frame. Maybe it's release month or something. I don't totally know. I think it could be even the day, but 10,000 books, okay? So if you've been watching me do the numbers, and if you look at indie authors in general and traditionally published authors numbers in general on Amazon, you will see that that's not very common, like, ever. And the second thing that you should know, a statistic that I found, is that typically in the traditional publishing world, if a book sells 2,000 copies in its lifetime, as in typically the first 2 years that it's out, that's like a shelf life for a traditional published book, typically, always typically, remember that, 2,000 books is normal for a traditionally published author, like a general average. Then how can we expect ourselves as brand new authors, indie authors, all by ourselves with no backup and no marketing experience whatsoever, to sell more than a traditionally published author would with all that backup and all that marketing experience? So realistic expectations, you guys. I just need to say it. Get realistic expectations. Am I saying that it's not possible? No, I am not saying that, because I love looking at authors like, for example, Chris Fox and Sarah Cannon from Heart Breathings, which you should follow both of them and their YouTube channels, by the way. They show their numbers. They are indie authors who are doing freaking amazing, and I'm so pumped to watch authors like them who are making it, because to me that says it is possible. But is it common? No. And is it going to happen right when you start out? Not unless you're a marketing genius, okay? Not unless you have a lot of skills besides writing to back you up. So I just really want to say, like, let's get some realistic expectations here for how much indie authors make, because I think some people will be deterred by that, honestly, going into it, if they realize that this is not a cash cow. For most authors, it's just not. Then that might actually deter them from going into it. And for those of you who still love writing and who just want to go into it for the love of it, because you want to self-publish and you enjoy it, it's going to help you not be so discouraged and not be so down on yourself, and not give yourself such a hard time for just being a beginner, because everyone starts out as a beginner. that's how it is. I have a little bit more math for you that I just want to bring into this video just to help you understand. I think in the US, I think it was either 30 or 40,000 was the average income per year. For easy math, I'm gonna do 40,000. If you wanted to make 40,000 a year per writing, and we're gonna go with the highest royalty that I mentioned, which is if you make $4 per book for every book that you have out there, you would have to sell 10,000 books a year to make that kind of money. And that's before taxes, my friend. Before taxes. Just so you know, for self-employed people, taxes are getting better right now, which is amazing, but they still are a huge chunk. So just want you guys to be really aware of that this idea of selling 10,000 books a year, it's going to be unrealistic in the beginning, but it is possible. Like if you work and work and work towards it, it could happen for you. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I just want to start everyone out because I feel like if you're watching my channel, you're probably like towards the beginning because you don't need my help. If you're further down the road, you already know all these things. So if you're like me and you're still kind of starting out on the road, I just want you to have really realistic expectations of yourself and give yourself the understanding that success is if you are growing in your sales, then you are successful. Okay, last but not least, we're going to talk about number 5, which is side hustles. And I just wanted to mention it in this video because I think it's gonna be obvious at this point. Like, if you guys have been watching and if you're still here with me, then you know authors don't make a lot, at least when they're starting out. And the reason that I wanna include it in this video is just to help you guys understand when you see, because there's so many of us authors in the writing community, especially on Authortube, who are starting to build up side hustles, whatever they might be. Like in my example, I have obviously Patreon. I love my patrons and I put so much work into helping them and being there for them as a thank you for them supporting me. And you'll see Patreon has kind of become a big thing in the Authortube community in general. And then you will also see, in my case, I have book trailers, like a business where I help other authors by making them book trailers. Or you'll see people like my friend Bethany who has her author website creator course, and she has the boot camp to help people create author websites. Or my friend Mandy Lynn, who has her cover design business, and she actually creates book covers for other authors. Or I also have some friends who offer editing services, which is another big thing that you can offer in the writing community. So I just want to say 2 things about side hustles. And the first one is that if you're going to offer a side hustle, it's really, really important, I believe, to make sure that you have the authority and the experience to back it up. Editors should have editing experience. Like, for example, for me, when I've done developmental edits in the past, I have said very clearly that I have not only an English major with a writing emphasis, and I had training in becoming an editor because that was my goal originally in school, but I also have testimonials and a lot of experience in editing and a lot of proof that I know what I'm doing. So if you are going to go into something, you should make sure that your authority is clear and that you have experience in it. If you don't have those things, my personal suggestion to you would actually be to start out offering those services for free and build up your experience and your authority. Offer your help to people and do the work for free and build up your portfolio and your experience and your authority, and ask them for testimonials so that when you are ready to offer something as a service, first of all, you make sure that you actually like doing that thing, and then second, you make sure that you do have the authority and the experience to back you up, because that's so important. And then the second thing that I want to say is that while I do totally get why some people are frustrated with courses in the author community, because some courses are a complete sham, and that's really unfortunate and really disappointing to see, but in other cases, people are getting picked on for having side hustles, and people are like, the author community is going downhill for having all these side hustles. And I just want to say, cut that out right now, because you are gonna see when you get to that point, when you're trying to publish your book and you're making, $2,400 a year max, you're gonna see that this is not always a full-time job, especially in the beginning. And you are going to completely understand why authors have side hustles, because we want to make a living off of writing. We don't want to be stuck in an office. We want to do the writing. And if that's our dream and our goal, then sometimes it takes a side hustle to get there. And so I'm just going to stand up for all the people who are having side hustles, because I don't think we get enough of that side. Like, yes, again, to be really, really clear, it's super important to me that you actually have the expertise, the authority, and the experience to back up your side hustle. But if you want to have one as an author, then I think that's 100% okay. I completely back up anyone who wants to do that. And just because it's a newer thing in the Authortube community does not make it a bad thing. So I might, you know, be a little bit controversial saying that, but I think if you were here long enough to hear the numbers, then I think you'll understand. This has been a really tricky topic to talk about, so I really hope that it was helpful to you guys. If it has been helpful, definitely give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so that you're notified next time I have a video. If you want to buy my books and help me out as an indie author, that would be amazing. I do have a limited number of signed copies available on my website as of now from BookCon, so if you are interested in that, I will definitely leave all the information below. And that's all I had to say today, so I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye! You stole my chair, Penny. You stole my chair. This is gonna be tricky. Yes, I love you too. I love you too. And you need to go.